solve large, intractable problems.
It's a new venture altogether.
Your brain is a wild horse there.
Because remember, writing is not a team sport.
You are not selling horse carriages when there are cars.
I want to be known only as the trusted advisor.
More like a tourist.
Play to Potential podcast.
In your journey, you've come across several givers, philanthropists, whatever we call them. Are there 3-4 people that have really inspired you in terms of the way they think about it?
Many, right? First is, of course, fictional characters or mythological or whatever you would call them. Karna, for example. If you read some of the stories of his giving, it's like ridiculous that a person can give away this much of themselves. Right? And when Krishna comes to in the battlefield after he's beaten and about to die, the form of a Brahmin, and says, you know, I'm scared because this guy had so much punya, wo agar kisi ko कर्ज दे देगा तो बहुत hurt हो जाएगा. And he comes, this guy is a Brahmin and says, you know, give me. And Karna says, I have nothing left, I've given away everything. And he says, no, but you have your punya, so can you give that to me? And Karna says, ठीक है ले लो. And he gives away even his punya. So he says, I don't even want that, yaar, wo bhi le jao. Credit, nothing I want. So I think that deeply inspirational. I read Mahabharata when I was in 3rd standard and 4th standard, Rajgopalchari's version, and you know, huge influence on me. So whether it's that, so some of this, of the ultimate selfless giving of wanting absolutely nothing back for yourself is really very powerful. The other is, of course, Mahabali's story. We just had Onam yesterday, right? That when the Lord comes in the form of Vamana to him and says, you know, he says, okay, I want to take 3 steps and you give me that land. And he says, go ahead and take it. And he takes 1 step, covers the earth, 1 step, covers the skies. He says, now where do I keep my 3rd step? He bends down and puts his head and says, keep it on my head. And knowing full well that when the Lord will do that, he will cease to exist. I think, you know, what powerful these stories are. So those, and then of course, people like Gandhi, phenomenal what he did. And then coming to the more recent generations, of course, it's reading a lot about Andrew Carnegie, you know, in the US, Henry Ford, a lot of the US robber barons that gave away bulk of their wealth and the work they did. And then, of course, a lot in Indian traditions. For example, the way Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya went about setting up Banaras Hindu University. It's an amazing story that people should read. Like literally going door to door, collecting money to set up a university. It was just a phenomenal journey. Or how, you know, people gave away their ornaments and other things to help raise money for the freedom struggle in India. Or Vinoba Bhave's Buddha movement. What a movement. I mean, the amount of land that man raised, I don't think the largest philanthropic organization can raise today with all the resources and all the sophisticated MBA planning that we put behind it. So, Vinoba Bhave. And then, of course, more recent, it's people like Bill Gates and, you know, Chuck Feeney, of course, in the US, extremely inspiring person. Most people haven't even heard of him. Chuck Feeney actually founded the Atlantic Philanthropies and General Atlantic Partners, by the way. And all his wealth from that went into the Atlantic Philanthropies. Until pretty much till the book about him was written, nobody knew where the money was coming from. So he was completely anonymous and he gave away billions way back. And Chuck Feeney doesn't even own a good car or anything like that. Ridiculously simple.
On that note, Venkat, how do you think about the point you just made about Chuck Feeney versus quote unquote coming out of the closet in the context of living your promise? Clearly, there's a signaling element to doing that to inspire other people. How do you think about that?
Yeah. So I think that is one of the biggest inhibitions for a lot of people doing good in India. And one of my biggest learnings is actually that, you know, while a percentage of GDP numbers are low and all of that stuff, there's a lot of giving in India that happens completely below the radar, right? So you go and you give money to a beggar, it doesn't get counted in that percentage of GDP figures. stuff like that. I think even after factoring that we are low, not to take away from that, and I think the bulk of that blame lies with the upper middle class and the wealthy of India. The poor in India are as generous as the poor anywhere else in the world, and the poor anywhere in the world are far, far, far higher in their generosity than the wealthy. Right? They're giving as a percentage of their income is ridiculously high compared.
No, I was just saying, in terms of keeping it private versus being public about it. How do we?
I think we've had that tradition of not wanting to talk about it. The left hand is not supposed to know what the right hand gives. Anybody who talks, a lot of our scriptures talk a lot about that as well. So if you remember that first paragraph, that paragraph you talked about where we wrote about India shutting down, above that paragraph was a story. I'll see if I can dig that out and send it to you. Story of which I read in our school textbook when I was a kid, of a rich miser and a cobbler. Do you have time? Should I?
Sure.
Okay. So the miser in a place, a very confused bugger, very uncompassionate, very so people would go to him in need, he would kick them out and throw them away, unwilling to help, etc., etc. And outside the gate of his mansion was a cobbler. And a Garib cobbler used to be the most generous person ever. And anybody who had any need, he was always giving. What generosity for this guy to give away so much, right? And after several years, the old miser dies. And the entire community is celebrating. Sala, Khadus, Buddha, mar gaya, acha ho gaya, ye ho gaya, wo ho gaya. The only person crying is the cobbler. Everybody is wondering, look at this guy's magnanimity, that even this Khadus Buddha dies, he's magnanimous. Go and catch him and say, don't worry, he's a bad guy, he deserves. And then finally somebody asks him, why are you crying? And he says, all these years, all that I was giving away, the miser was giving me the money. He just didn't want anybody to know. Very powerful story, right? I think there is a lot to be said about that, because there is value in saying that my giving is so selfless that I don't want the credit for it. And I completely relate to people who feel that, right? And personally, always been trying to go away from credit as much as I can, because credit, I think, board positions, credit, a lot of these are currencies in addition to money. Some people, somebody may not give money unless you give them a board position. They do usko board position. Somebody will not give money if you don't give them credit. Give them the credit. Somebody will not do some good work if they don't get recognition. Give them the recognition. Give them the awards. A lot of these things give people energy to continue. So they are a different form of currency. So those of us who don't need it should actually stay away from it, because it helps get more people involved, more passionately, more engaged, and all of that kind of stuff. But what I've learned also is that if we don't talk about it, then people don't know about it. And then you lose out on those opportunities to get a lot of other people to join that journey, right? So when I reflect back and ask myself, why am I doing a lot of this? It is because I read about not just Karna and Mahabali in my childhood, because they were mythological characters, but also about Gandhi, also about a lot of other people, Andrew Carnegie, about all these people that I read about when I was young that had an influence on me. So if you don't hear from people, then you don't have those models to be inspired by, right? And I say this without any ego. It's not like, those of us who are doing this are like some great people or anything like that. But if it helps somebody, what's the harm? And I think, when I was going through this reflection for myself, at least, in the context of the Giving Pledge when it first started, my first reaction was similar to many other people. Why are they showing off, etc.? And then I thought deeper about it, and I said that, if someday I have it, I will definitely give it. And then I asked, would I talk about it? And I realized one thing, that this feeling that I don't want to get credit, after a point, there is a certain amount of ego even in that. Right? In saying that, look, I'm so selfless that I don't even want that back. I'm saying, give that selflessness up also.
Very interesting.
Wo bhi chhod do yaar. Because if it is, if people will think, ye kya sala show off aadmi hai, let them think that about me. If it helps 10 other people give, I don't want to be liked also. Wo bhi de denge, let's surrender all of that.
Yeah, I guess it goes back to the why, having the clarity around the keeping the
Absolutely.
purpose front and center.
I think we know why we are doing it. If you're doing it because you want people to, clap for you or you want 100 Facebook likes, then there's a deep problem with that. But the beauty of, I think all the Living My Promise signatories we've had is exactly that. All of them are coming from a very, very simple space. One thing common across all 54. Everybody feels deeply grateful for what they are. All of them will uniformly tell you, if you go and read their letters and statements, you will find across the one common thing. I was lucky, I am grateful for what I have, and I owe it back to society. I think that speaks of a humility. It's not like I want to do this, I want to eradicate this, I want to solve this. That there's no such arrogance in any of their statements. It's all coming from this very simple humility. Yaar, meri lottery lag gayi hai. Other people inki lottery nahi lagi hai. I just owe it back. It's as simple as that.
I love the point Venkat makes about keeping the why front and central. And the fact that we want to keep our giving private could also come from a place of ego, and we need to watch out against it. In the context of Living My Promise, here are 3 of the participants who I happen to know who share their perspectives on why they became a part of this movement. First, we have Govind Iyer, a partner at Aegon Zender, and the recently appointed chairperson of Social Venture Partners in India. Govind has been a mentor and an inspiration during my time at Aegon Zender and beyond.
Hi. Living My Promise is a fabulous movement that started in India by a few very well-meaning individuals. When I heard about it, I instantly signed up because I felt it's the best way for me as an individual to give back to all those that have given me over the last many, many years of my life. It's rare that one comes across an opportunity to do something for human civil society and for human beings. And I saw Living My Promise as a great opportunity to get together with a bunch of promisers, all with the same singular focus of making a difference to civil society. That's what led me to join up, and that's what makes me so excited about making a difference. I do want to mention that it's not all about money. It's also about engagement, it's also about passion, and it's also about impact. So whether you're 30 years of age or whether you're 60 years of age or older, start giving now and start giving through the best way you think works for you. There is no one way for all. Everybody has to choose their own journey.
Then we have Meenakshi Ramesh, a trustee at Urvani Foundation, and her husband Ramesh Mangaleshwaran, a senior partner at McKinsey. Now, Meenakshi and Ramesh were batchmates with Venkat at IMA. And as a matter of related trivia, Ramesh is the individual that nudged me to consider a career in search more than a decade back and made the introduction to Govind Iyer. And that one nudge completely changed my life. I'm reminded of the butterfly effect that's often used in the context of chaos theory. A flutter of a butterfly's wing can cause a tornado halfway around the world. And I think Ramesh's nudge made a huge difference to my life. So thank you, Ramesh. Meenakshi Ramesh speaks about why she and Ramesh chose to join the Living My Promise movement.
So there came a time when Ramesh and I began to realize that it was not really a choice of sharing this good fortune that we had with others. It was really an obligation, a responsibility, because we had received so much more than we had expected or than we think we deserved. We had had the good fortune of being in families that valued good education. We got great opportunities to go out and make a living. So we think that being in Living My Promise is a wonderful way to achieve this obligation to share with those that didn't get a piece of this good fortune. The group is like an honor code. You want to do the best you can. You want to meet with like-minded individuals, understand their experiences, learn from their maybe mistakes, what didn't go right. And the most important thing for Ramesh and I is that we want to share and we want to live the promise of giving away more than half of our personal wealth within our lifetime and share this joy as much as possible. Thank you.
And finally, we have Sudhir Shenoy, who's a fellow colleague at Social Venture Partners in Mumbai and the head of Dow Chemicals in India.
At some level, I always knew that I was committed to giving a significant part of my wealth towards philanthropy. But Living My Promise helped put some structure into it. It made it more formal for myself. It helped me to start taking concrete actions versus kind of figuring it out later on to how I'm going to manage my wealth and how do I make it the most tax efficient way. It forced me to think about whether I wanted to give it to a specific cause, a specific organization, whether I wanted to retain some part of it for something that I would be involved myself in my retirement days and so on. Additionally, it's helped me network into a wonderful family of philanthropists, a great network that helps me connect to others who are associated with similar and other causes, a lot of learning opportunity. And of course, eventually it also created a buzz amongst my network. A lot of other people, it forces them to start thinking about how they want to approach things, especially as people in my network get into their 50s and start to think about the next phase of life. So all in all, it's been a fantastic journey thus far.
To know more about this movement, please visit livingmypromise.org.